Good morning and welcome back to my channel. It's Saturday the 21st of June 2025 and it's about 8:45 in the morning. I'll kick off with what's for the basket like I always do, and this week it is messicani, I think you pronounce it, M-E-S-S-I-C-A-N-I pasta. They're like little pennies with a rim around, and I thought this would be good for anybody who wants to make a cold pasta salad, because in this heat I think a lot of us are choosing, well, I'll speak for myself, I am choosing a lot more cold food. I think even you felt that way, haven't you, Joe? It's not the weather for hot food. The other thing I found, which kind of ties in with choosing cold food, is this Korean pasta salad. It's from Aldi. I believe it was about $1.89, something like that. It's vegetables, noodles. It's probably called Korean noodles. It's vegetables and noodles in a spicy tomato sauce. But when I say spicy, I would say it's 1 to 1.5 chili spicy, because I don't like hot, spicy food, but I do like this. And I have this, or had it yesterday, with cold water prawns and a cucumber salad, and it was really nice. So I've got another one in the fridge for today or tomorrow. If you pair it with the cold water prawns, and then, as I did, a cucumber salad, you've actually got a food optimised meal, because there are noodles in that, there are vegetables in that, and then you're adding your protein with your cold water prawns, or whatever proteins you choose. It's also got soybeans in, so there are proteins there. And then of course the cucumber, you've got speed, but there are vegetables in there that are free veg. So something I observed on Shell's video this week, she was talking about having food optimised all the meals. And I realised, yeah, do I always think every time I have a meal, is this food optimised? There are occasions when you can't. And there are occasions when you don't have to. If you're having a B choice or something like that, you don't have to add speed or protein to it. Sorry, that's my Alexa talking. But I think if as a rule of thumb you can food optimise as many meals as possible, you will get better results. Right, okay. So let's look at the word of affirmation this week. And for me this week it's about ownership. I always say when I make a mistake I need to own it, when I make a choice I need to own it, and when I react to something I need to own it. And that's what I've been focusing on this week, taking ownership of my behaviours. I'll talk about that in a little while. Firstly, let's talk about the heat. It has been so hot in Nottingham this week. I think we hit 29.5 degrees when we were out walking yesterday. And the easy option would be to say, I'm not going, it's too hot. But I need to take ownership of the fact that I actually enjoy a good walk. And the fact that it's hot, if I'm dressed appropriately, shouldn't bother me. So we have walked every day this week, and I intend to walk every day next week. And some of the days next week, it's forecast showers. But I bought myself a new shower jacket this week. So, yeah, I'm equipped. Somebody said on a video a while ago, the only thing you get wrong is not the weather, it's the clothing you choose to wear that is appropriate for the weather. And we laugh sometimes, and Joe will say to me, we're driving along and we're walking somewhere, and he'll say to me, can you explain to me why somebody is wearing a parka and a beanie hat and it's 27 degrees? But each to their own, and who am I to judge? And that's another thing I'm having to learn about. So, I want to use this heat as an incentive to keep going, because it would be so easy to think, sod it, it's hot, I'm going to eat ice cream, I need a ice lolly or a sucker, as they call them in Nottingham. Oh, it's too, I can't be bothered, it's this, it's that, I'm too hot. Who wants to prep and who wants to cook and who wants to do everything? Well, Byron inspired us this week because he was bothering, he was making an effort. Shell inspired me this week by talking about the fact that she's looking at food optimising her meals. they're not packing in because it's hot. Neither should I. So I'm using the weather as an incentive to eat cold food or food with chilies in, because it's strange. Eating something like Korean spice noodles when it's hot actually didn't make me any hotter. It seems to balance my temperature more. Drinking tea when I come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I collapse in the chair saying, it's too hot. Drinking tea actually cools me down, as long as I don't drink it like at an absolutely boiling temperature. So I'll say it again, I'm using the heat as an incentive to keep going, because last summer, when I was 3.5 stone heavier, and previous summers where I've been up to 11 stone heavier, have been bloody miserable in this heat. You know, people talk about sweating profusely. I'm not a sweaty person, actually. I'm lucky in that regard, because I'm not a person who retains fluid, and I do not sweat a lot. Sometimes when it's humid, I'll come in and I look like my face is leaking, but I'm not a hot, sweaty feet, sweaty armpits type person at all. But what I do find is my strength is often zapped in the heat, and I can be very lazy in the heat. So I have to make a conscious effort to keep going. I know a lot of people, bigger people, talk about chub rub, etc. The incentive is when you are slimmer, that does not happen. I only had that when I weighed over 20 stone. I'm lucky today in that I don't carry a lot of my weight on the bottom half of my body. I carry the majority of my weight on the top half of my body. But things like that are real. And if you want to avoid them, the best thing you can do is shed some weight. Okay, so take the heat and use it to your advantage. Remember, if you're halfway through your journey, you don't want to go back to where you were. That's where I'm at. I'm well into my journey. I don't want to go back to where I was. I don't want to feel like the woman who needs to wear a cardigan in the heat, because a black cardigan will make me look smaller. It never did. Okay, I've given Joe a little list of things that I wanted to talk about, because my memory is dreadful. Do you have number one, Joe?
Is it the 1960s video?
During the week, something popped up on my list of recommended YouTube videos, and it was about the 1960s. I was gobsmacked, because it was American, but it really reflected what we did in this country too. It was talking about portion sizes, the foods we ate, why we didn't eat between meals, weren't as many fast food joints. Of course, in America there weren't, in this country there were practically not. But one of the things that really struck me was things like the amount of fizzy pop that people drink, the size of burgers, the amount of takeaways, the choices they made. And I was thinking about this as it related to me. Well, my life in the 60s, I was a child. In 1960, I was 4 that year. So by the end of the 60s, I was 14. I lived in a small village in Nottinghamshire. We didn't have any takeaways, didn't even have a chip shop. We had 3 pubs. But we didn't have the opportunity to eat a lot of the junk. A, because I lived in a very small village, and B, because it was a time before it was all available. Now, thinking about it logically, that's lovely, looking at the history, looking at the changes, the fact that we didn't have Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola, all of these things. We couldn't choose them because they weren't there. And it's lovely, let's look back and wow, that was so nice and it was so easy. But what we're actually dealing with today is not that. What we're dealing with today is being overfaced by all the food that's available from God knows what time in the morning till God knows what time at night. Because where I live in the city, Greggs is open 24 hours a day. So they can catch people coming out of clubs, when they're a bit paralytic or a bit drugged up and they're needing they've got the munchies, they need something. I'm not knocking that, I'm not judging it. Have a good time, do what you want. But we never had to face any of that. Today we do. Joe and I walk into Nottingham regularly, even just for the walk. Sometimes we'll just walk to Cafe Miro Is that rain?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's pouring with rain. Oh, that's lovely. Sorry. Distraction, I wasn't expecting that. We walk into Nottingham regularly. We have a route where we walk to Cafe Nero, which is about 5,500 steps from our house, 6,000 steps from our house. Takes us about 50 minutes. We walk into Cafe Nero, we sit down, he gets 2 iced black Americanos to drink in because they're bigger than the takeouts, and we drink it, and we have a chat, or we look on Vinted, or we do something. You know, usually have a laugh about something, and then we walk back. And my legs are reinvigorated by the black coffee. And I love that. But to get to Cafe Nero on that route into Nottingham, we have to walk the gauntlet of about 20 takeaway food places, sandwich places, bagel places, cake places, what I call chicken armpit places. I think most people would call them chicken wings. Not for me. I always think of them as little sweaty armpits. So we walk the gauntlet of all these places. There's Subway, there's sandwich places, there's noodle places, there's everything you can imagine. And that road, I can't even think what it calls, it's probably part of Queen's Drive. It stinks from one end to the other of food. Now some of it smells really appetising, some of it doesn't. But we didn't have that to contend with in the 1960s. It's a reality today. If I walked into town and I was hungry, I could stop at approximately 20 different places and buy food, and I could hold it in my hand and I could eat it as I walked along the street. That was something else we never did in the 60s. We never ate in the street or on buses. We ate round the table 3 times a day. That was an ideal world. We don't live in an ideal world today. We live in a world of temptation and choices. So what I'm saying is, doing Slimming World today is so much more difficult than it would have been for us to do Slimming World in the 60s. And we need to acknowledge that. And we need to say we're doing good. If we're sticking to this plan, or doing our version of sticking to this plan, or doing our best to stick to this plan, we are doing good. Because we have to get over so many more things than we did in the 1960s. So don't beat yourself up. If you're finding it difficult, just do the best you can. Choices when you go to the supermarket. I don't remember my first trip to the supermarket till I was 12 years old. That was 1968. We went to a very small supermarket in a place called Rosington, which was not far from where we lived. And we came back with a huge box of groceries. Mum put both leaves up on our kitchen table, the food filled the table, and she was wowed because it had cost her a £5. I'd be wowed today if I could fill my kitchen table for 250 quid. It's a different world. So we have different expectations of ourselves and others. So it's nice to look back, but in reality that is never where we're going to live. We live here and now. Number 2, Joe.
Everything evolves, including Slimming World.
Yeah, I've touched on that a bit, but everything evolves, including Slimming World. Because when I first came across Slimming World, back in about, 73, very early 70s, it was called J&M Slimming. It was a little book. It was not Slimming World as we know it today. And if you did Slimming World in the 70s, which I did, the 80s, the 90s, coming up to the 2000s, 2010, it was a different plan. We did not food optimise. Before the red and green, or in the early days of red and green, it was crackers. I look back and I thought I liked the red and green, but it was very restrictive because you could do one or you could do the other. So the green was designed if you're pretty much a vegetarian, virgin or a vegan. The red was designed if you were a meat eater. But if you did the red, you had to drop the carbs. So it was a bit more like SP. If you did the green, where did you find your proteins? If you weren't a proper vegan or a proper vegetarian, you floundered because you didn't know where the hell to get the protein from. So although the red and green days were good, we look back with rose-tinted glasses, they were not brilliant. And then the beginning of food optimizing, there was a different version before the version we have today. And I think the version we have today gives us more freedom doing Slimming World than we have ever had. And I was thinking to myself the other day, people knock Slimming World. They say, oh, you're paying all this money, you don't need to pay, you can do it at home for nothing and all this. But I look at it today. What is Slimming World to me today? Am I dependent on Slimming World? No. I'm no more dependent on Slimming World than I was dependent on going to infant school and learning to read and write. It's a place where I can, if I choose, get educated. Some people come to group and they choose to use it like a coffee morning, and that's fabulous, and they need the company and they're not really bothered about losing weight, so they go up and down like a yo-yo and they'll have a giggle about it. That's fabulous for them. Some people come and they lose weight between their 3 or 4 holidays a year, and that's fabulous for them. Some people come as a lovely young woman in my group because I've had a baby. She's blinking inspiring, fabulous. But some of us are there because we have very bad habits around food and we need re-educating. That's why I'm there. I needed re-educating, and that's an evolving thing too, because you never crack it. I will always be a food addict. So today, one day at a time, I make better choices. There's no perfection. There's following the plan and living the lifestyle. That's not perfection. You do it. You might hit your number of sins every day. You might have your healthy extras every day. You might have your free food and your speed food every day. But it's not perfection, because there's no such thing. And there's no finishing line. And you'll never cross this imaginary line, because wherever you go, whether you think you're on this side of the line or that side of the line, you're taking yourself with you, and yourself has frailties. So the best thing for me to do is keep fronting up every Tuesday morning, listening to what other people have to share, sharing anything I've learned or experienced, and being consistent. Yeah. Next one, Joe.
Drug of choice and ladder Aldi.
My drug of choice is food. Through my teenage years, my 20s, my 30s, into my 40s, I had 2 drugs of choice. One was food, one was fags. Pardon me. Marlboro, not even Marlboro Light. I was a Marlboro addict. And even now, when I walk outside Asda and somebody is smoking a Marlboro or a Benson and Hedges, I can smell the difference. Can't stand Benson and Hedges. Smell of black pepper to me. And I don't like black pepper. But Marlboro, oh my God, there were times in my life I would have done anything to get my hands on a packet of 20 Marlboro, and they would not have lasted me the day. That was a drug of choice. Don't smoke today. I once stopped for 10 years, then I had a really bad, something happened when I was working for Samaritans a good few years ago, and something traumatic happened, and one of the guys took me to the pub and gave me a fag. And I was off again for another 5 years. I don't knock anybody who smokes. I don't judge anybody who smokes. I would actively encourage anybody to stop, because until you stop smoking, you don't know what food tastes like. Well, I didn't. But my 2 drugs of choice were, it's making me shake thinking about it, food primarily, and fags very close behind. And
Sorry.
You're right, he's got hay fever, bless him. When I was a total food addict, I couldn't think beyond food. My head was full of it. I was foggy all the time. When I was a fag addict, it held the food in control, but instead of eating, I would smoke and drink coffee. So I'd get through a day by smoking 20, 30 plus fags and drinking a hell of a lot of coffee. Until I learned that first, before I could conquer the food, I had to give up the fags. And it was not easy, but I did it eventually. I didn't need hypnosis or acupuncture. My dad had acupuncture to give up smoking, never smoked another fag, and he was a 40-a-day Woodbine man. But I didn't believe enough in that. So, okay, my drug of choice. Now, the other day I was out with Joe and we went in Lidl. There was a lad sitting outside. Probably, I don't know, in his 20s, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he asked us on the way in if we had any change, and Joe said he didn't. Well, we didn't at that point. He didn't, but did the guy want a drink or something? And he said, no, thank you. And he was polite. And when I was in there and I was shopping, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I could buy anything I want in this store. I've got cards in my pocket or whatever. And then I thought, actually, I've got some money in the front of my purse that I just keep there for emergencies. And we're doing the shopping, and I was thinking all the time I was going around the shop, you know, there but for the grace of God go I. I was an addict. I still am. I'm an addict in recovery, but I am still an addict. If the circumstances put me in such a place that I had no other thing to do in my head than reach for the food or reach for the fags, I am that close to being an addict. I'm still an addict. When we came out of the shop, we did give the lads some money. And Joe's feeling is like mine was, and I get it. You don't know what they're going to spend that money on. And there are things all around Nottingham encouraging you to not give money to the homeless, to not give money to people who are begging, because you don't know what they're going to spend it on. Give it to these charities. Well, that's what I would have done at one time. But those charities give 10% to the charity in a lot of cases, and the other 90% goes on running the charity. And part of me just thinks, there but for the grace of God go I. And I do not want to be judgmental anymore, because whatever this lad chose to spend the money on is none of my business. It's none of my business, but there have been times in my life when I was young and single and desperate. Maybe I was only desperate for the packet of fags I couldn't afford, and I would have to scrounge some off a mate. That was enough. But yeah, what I'm working on this week is taking ownership of my own behaviour and not being so bloody judgmental. Because if I'd walked away and not helped that lad, the chances are I could have eaten over it, or smoked over it, or beat myself up over it and felt like a bitch. Because it's not my place to judge him. And I am an addict. Why am I better than him? So that's where my week's been. I think that was all I had on my list, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah.
The rain stopped. That's probably cleared the air a bit. And we are now off to the gym. And then we're off to walk into Nottingham, because I want to do a bit of shopping. So I hope you've all had a good week. Carry on with where this plan is taking you. But I would ask you, please enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be judgmental, not even against yourself. Because the chances are some of you are like me. You're addicts too. Have a good week. Bye.